Hello, everyone. Welcome to the finale of 7 Heavenly Virtues. We're covering harmony today, and this is the counterpart teaching to codependency. So I'm going to do a brief recap on the shadow part, and then we'll talk about harmony itself. One little piece of housekeeping, I want to remind all of you that it is enrollment month for church. So enrollment is going to be open until the 30th of this month, and then doors are closed. So make sure that if you want to get into that, get into that. If you've liked these, you're going to love the sermons that we do in there every single month. And if you're wanting me to help you facilitate connecting to God, talking with God, repairing that relationship, that is what we do inside church, and a bunch of other fun stuff too. So, June 30th. Yeah, church, get in. That's what's in the comment section. Now you know. In the 7 Deadly Shadows, the way that I described codependency was when you are plugged in and then someone does something over here and you unplug to go tend to that situation. It's really important that we look at this primarily from the 2 codependency types that I gave. Those are going to be the most common that we are relating to people from. So, of course, we could say codependency is any external circumstance that you are using as an excuse to disconnect from God, to turn away from God. So we could say that about your bank account. We could say that the difference between scarcity and codependency is scarcity is when you are imagining running out of money, or you're imagining something bad happen when it comes to money. But codependency is when, for example, in the case of money, looking at your bank account and then that makes you unplug. It's splitting hairs, really. There's no need for us to spend too much time on this. This particular shadow and virtue is just highlighting that difference between you using external circumstances as an excuse. But for our purposes today, we're mostly going to be focusing on relationships and dealing with other people. So in the 7 Deadly Shadows, the codependency call, I describe codependence as being in 2 categories. The first one being managers. So these are the types of codependents that want other people to get their shit together. I want you to do this. I want you to behave this way. I want you to say this thing. I want you to stop making poor choices. I want you to sweep your side of the street. I want you to behave in a particular way so I can feel better. Because what you're temporarily doing, or what a manager codependent is temporarily doing, is your misbehavior is making me uncomfortable. So I want you to change your behavior so that I can feel relief. So you have now turned that person's behavior into your God. That's now what you've started worshiping, because your steadiness is dependent on the other person's behavior. The other type of codependent is shapeshifter codependence. These are the people who abandon themselves and are deceitful liars in order to placate others. So usually, these types of codependents describe themselves as peacekeepers, or they don't want to ruffle any feathers, which really all that is, and I'm always really explicit about this. I do not call shapeshifter codependents. I call them liars. So I just call it what it is around here. If you are shape-shifting and contorting yourself, if you're hiding your desires, if you're not being honest because you're afraid you're going to upset someone, if you are in a perpetual state of deceit, if you're walking on eggshells and not allowing yourself to relax and be yourself, you are lying. If you are in a chronic state of telling people what you think they want to hear, you are lying. And so when we can look at it black and white that way, It can clear a lot of this up, because instead of you, if you're a shapeshifter codependent, instead of you thinking, oh, my codependency is flaring up, the softened language actually causes more of an issue. It's you are either being honest or you are lying. If you can look at it in that binary, it can help with correcting the way that you're moving in the relationship and how you're presenting yourself in the relationship, what you're giving the other person the opportunity to respond to. So once again, to reiterate this, manage your codependence, don't like other people's behavior, so they disconnect to go force other people into behaving, either through their words, their actions, whatever. You're trying to force the other person into submission in some capacity, or talk them into behaving how you want them to behave. And that requires you to disconnect if you're going to do that. The second type is I'm going to disconnect from God, I'm going to disconnect from my truth, I'm going to disconnect from my stability, and I'm going to go twist myself into a pretzel and be deceitful about what I'm presenting in this relationship, because you can't be that far disconnected from your desires and your truth and what you want to bring to the relationship and be connected at the same time. Because again, where's your stuff? Over here. So it is not through your contortions that you're actually able to evoke better behavior from people. If you contort yourself into a position that you don't want to be in, you are training the other person to continue manipulating you, to continue throwing tantrums, to continue saying certain things and doing certain things in order to extract something from you. That is your fault. I want to make that very clear. So if you want other people to stop being upset with you, you can't really do that. But what you can do is not budge, not disconnect, not submit to whatever it is that they're trying to get from you. Don't placate the other people. Stabilize yourself through the discomfort, and eventually they'll just have to adapt to you at a certain point. It's like they'll either move farther away, which that's one of the reasons why shapeshifters have a really hard time doing that, because they're like, I would rather just adjust myself in a way that is uncomfortable rather than be honest and potentially risk losing this relationship. Usually shapeshifters have really low standards in relationships, and they have very poor quality relationships. Managers, they have a tendency to attract more of like the fix-it projects. Can you be a bit of both? Yeah, different people can evoke different things from you. So you might notice that in your life, you have one flavor of codependency show up with one parent, and then the opposite codependency flare up with the other. So yes, definitely. Usually though, for people who are, if this is like your primary shadow, you probably have a dominant one, more than likely. For example, I do not have a fawn response bone in my body. I do not have any shapeshifter energy inside of me. But some people have like a different ratio. Is shapeshifting a more intense degree of people pleasing? Or are they the same thing or not? They're the same thing. Let me make the distinction between these two things. If I am flowing love to someone, genuine love, that is unconditional, meaning I do not need to evoke a response from them, I'm not manipulating them, I just like flowing love to someone or giving something to someone, and it's completely without an ulterior motive, and it happens to please them, you're in connection, because you're not being dependent on what you evoke from them. You're not being dependent on how they react. You're not being dependent on how they respond. You're not going to be upset if they don't say thank you. It is completely unconditional. That is just purely flowing love for the sake of flowing love, because it feels good. Selfishly, it feels good to flow love and to be good to people. If you are people pleasing, usually that comes with a motive. It's not, I happen to please someone because I'm flowing love, and the pleasing of the people is just a natural byproduct of my connection, which is why if you're over here, if you're focused on your connection to God, the byproduct of that is the fruit that you want. So everyone who interacts with you is going to experience your light when you're connected here. That's just a natural effect. But people pleasing is, I have a motive. I'm going to be way too uncomfortable if you're upset with me. I simply cannot handle it. If you disapprove of me, if you don't like me because of what I really want to say, any of that stuff. Your intolerance of that discomfort causes you to disconnect, and so then you start lying to people. That's people pleasing. It's not connecting and flowing love. It's, I've got a motive and now I'm gonna shapeshift in order to get that thing from you. I need you to like me in order for me to feel safe. I need you to be a certain way in order for me to feel safe and good. I need you to not be upset with me in order for me to feel okay. That's worshiping the behavior of another person. So anytime you do that, you're being codependent. That makes it so clear. Thank you. Good. Once again, this is the landscape. Connection and harmony. Disconnection, codependency. So that's the binary, and then you're orienting between those two things. The most difficult part about dealing with this shadow is that we have been trained to create change in relationships through communication. And I say kinda. That's part of it. It's part of it. But most people are putting 90% of their effort in communication rather than connection. Connection, over here, where's your stuff? Where's your stuff? That includes behavior from others. So God is not over here saying, I'll give you anything you want except being treated well by others. That's the one thing that's too big for me. Again, we're talking about a God that created heaven and earth. You think that you can't be treated well by other people? That's too much. Other people's free will is just way out of bounds when it comes to God. People forget, or what they fail to realize is that your goods, all your goods, all the behavior that you want, everything that you want to evoke, the highest expression of everyone that you come in contact with is over here. If you focus away from that, all bets are off. If you focus away from God, you could evoke anything from people. You could catch the nicest people on their worst day and get that version of them. One of the things that I believe has been a really bittersweet part of the internet has been the concept of victim blaming. Because there's this fine line where it's like, okay, was the way that you were treated as a child your fault? No. We all understand that. That like, yes, do we all experience being victimized at a certain point where someone's behavior is out of our control in a given moment, and then we can be victimized by that experience, by that person, by their behavior, by their words, by their actions, whatever. At the same time, there is also a need for us to understand that we evoke things from people. You have two camps of people for the most part, which is, do you believe you're a creator or do you believe that you're a victim? Because you can't have both. So I'm of the mindset that we choose our bullshit. including all the horrible things that you've experienced, including your family of origin, including all of the mistreatment that shaped who you are today. I believe that's part of us choosing the game board that we start with, that forms your ego, your desires, your personality, your mission, and it sets the trajectory of your unique soul. So I see the bullshit as being a part of this intricate process of evolution. I understand, yes, the human side of victimization, there's certain behavior that's beyond your control. I understand that just for the sake of being compassionate and not being completely disconnected from consensus reality, there's a part of us that has to acknowledge that. But then where it's been taken too far is people have been so focused on don't victim blame, don't victim blame, don't victim blame. There's a lot of people who never look at it, who never look at there might be a reason why I'm evoking this from people. If there is a woman who is dating abusive men over and over and over and over and over, what's happening there? There's a lot of people online who say she's a victim, she's a victim, she's a victim. I will say she was a victim of whatever programming she got early on. As an adult, if you are being mistreated by others and it persists, or you see that there's a common thread between all these different relationships, you are the common denominator. So if you are evoking abuse, then you're in the position where you have to pick. Are you a victim or are you a creator? Because you can't be both at the same time. Either you believe no good men exist, all of them are evil abusers, and you exist in that paradigm, or you think that there might be something about how you're being in the world, how you're being in your body that is evoking that from people, from these relationships. There are so many complications when it comes to other people's behavior, and then the intersection between us and other people's behavior. This is why I have to bring it back to, if we're connected, we'll evoke the best from ourselves and each other. And it cuts out all the shit. Let's go back to the abused woman example. If she is just a victim and that's the way it is, why would she go to therapy? What would be the goal of therapy at that point? To heal and evoke different experiences. The goal of therapy at that point is to make it so that she has more control over her ability to detect things early on, set boundaries early on, rule people out, weed people out early, set the standard for the quality of relationships that she experiences. That would be the whole point. So this is why I'm saying you can't say you shouldn't ever victim blame, because then that cuts out all the possibility of introspection. And then if you're not introspective, if you don't investigate, maybe I'm evoking this, then you can't fix it. The personal responsibility pill can be a tough one to swallow, but I'm with you. It's super important for reclaiming empowerment. Here's how I see victimhood with all of this when it comes to other people's behavior. Victimhood is useful for a very short period of time. It can help you, like if you're blaming and condemning yourself, well, that's not helpful. That's not helpful, right? So if you say it's their fault, that can actually lift you up a little bit. That can start lifting the fog. You can feel some relief if you start blaming others and see yourself as a victim just briefly. But then you have to keep going. So victimhood and blame is the same thing, right? It's not my fault, it's your fault. And see, I'm pretty sure all of us can agree, someone who stays there is the fucking worst. Someone who is constantly in victimhood, oh my God, they're going nowhere fast. And it's just like one of the most insufferable people to talk to is someone who's permanently in victimhood. So it's not wise to stay there. But then what exists beyond is, what's my part here? What's my role in this? How am I disconnected and evoking this? Because if you're connected to perfect love, the perspective of God, the clarity of God, the wisdom of God, all the goods over here, you can't evoke all of that from other people. You can't evoke abuse in a way that lands. You know, when Jesus said, turn the other cheek, what he meant is do not disconnect. If someone comes into your orbit and maybe tempts you with codependency, maybe they attempt to bully you, maybe they say something you don't like, maybe they do something, don't disconnect. If they take your shoes, give them your tunic too, because it's not worth disconnecting. How am I disconnected and evoking this? Yes, that is the question. Becoming aware of the dynamics is essential, though. It's usually by the time people are aware of the dynamics, it's too late. Okay, so let's take the domestic labor example. You know what people do when they move in together? Mostly, yeah, let's move in together. Ignorant as hell. They just view moving in together as this, just a natural stage in the relationship. It's just something you do. No, it is not just something you do. Or it's unwise to view it that way, because that's how a lot of these messes begin. And then by the time it's, well, you need to become aware of the dynamics, you've been on autopilot. So any codependency that you take into the relationship, into cohabitation specifically, usually festers and becomes extremely painful before anyone starts paying attention. And then you're so full of resentment, it's going to feel much more difficult to repair because you've trained the other person for so long. So no, I don't think that you want to just like go in, have your natural tendencies flare up, and then only after you're in pain and only after you've seen the worst in each other, then you start negotiating. I think that's foolish. I think that we've been very short-sighted with the domestic labor conversation. I think we're taking it way too personally, collectively, where every time you are not met, it's like a knife in the heart. It's, you didn't take the laundry out of the dryer and it's as if you've been personally assaulted. This is not the right way to live. Straight up, being this disconnected for this amount of time over petty household tasks, and people are falling apart and drowning over this. It does not need to be this way. One day, this is a perfect example of codependency. I was living with my grandparents at the time, and I got a call from my aunt, the lip gloss aunt. You remember that situation? And she said, hey, if you happen to be out, can you bring me a baking dish? I want to make brownies. And I said, oh yeah, I'm not going to go out for the rest of the day. That was it. She just said, if I happen to be out, can I bring that? And I said, yeah, I'm not doing that. That was, as far as the conversation got, I wasn't leaving the house. My grandmother came home, got the baking dish, rushed it over to my aunt's house, and then was angry at me for not doing it. And we got into a huge fight over whether or not that was the right thing to do. And my perspective was, I will not be at her beck and call. It's completely out of the question. Why? Because I need to train her. I need her to know that if she calls me and asks me for a favor, it'll depend. Maybe. That's the tone that I want to set. You don't just get to call me up, and don't ever get into the expectation that you can call me up and I'll do anything that you ask. I don't want that to be the culture that I am setting in relationships. In the same way with the domestic labor conversation, do you want every time you are asked to do something, or every time there is something that needs to get done, you take it onto your plate? Do you want to train yourself to do that and everyone else around you to just expect that? Then you have to set the tone. You have to set the culture. Because here's the thing. If someone came into your house tomorrow and started doing everything for you, you'd let them. If you are the person who is doing everything, why wouldn't the other people let you? If you came into my house and started doing my laundry and started cleaning my kitchen and took on all the domestic labor, I'd let you. Yeah, do all that shit. You want to paint my garage too? I'll put your ass to work. Of course you're going to get taken advantage of. Because not everyone's a bleeding heart. Business arrangement is totally the way to go. It neutralizes everything. It is not personal. If domestic labor becomes, you love me, you don't love me, you're fucked. If instead it's, are we clear on who's managing what, who's responsible for what tasks? If it's business, it's not going to feel like a personal attack. Codependency keeps you in perpetual victimhood. That's the biggest issue. Because if your mood is now dependent on the socks on the floor, whether or not someone says thank you, whether or not someone did what you wanted them to do, and this is, I always say this as a test for people if they should do something. If you do this and you do not get acknowledged, you do not get any praise, you do not get accolades, the person doesn't say thank you, they don't give a shit. You get no acknowledgement for it. Do you still want to do it? Because a lot of people, I'm telling you right now, codependents, especially managers, of the two, if there's not acknowledgement, if there's not appreciation, if there's not praise of some sort or submission, then it'll put you in a rotten mood. I see it all the time. I find that I fear losing my autonomy too much to allow myself to become codependent. I think it comes from being forced into that role growing up. I suspect I disconnect into extreme independence. Hold on, let me think about that shadow. That could fall into fear or powerlessness. Like if you're saying, I cannot rely on people at all, like it is unsafe to rely on people or to ask something of someone, or I'm afraid I'm not going to be met, or I'm afraid I'm not going to be loved in some capacity to the point where you're rigid and calcified, that is either powerlessness or fear. Because once again, it's kind of like, yeah, it's not harmonious. Yeah. So it's kind of like when you're in harmony, then it feels good to ask, to reach, and then be met. Or if you ask and you're opening your heart, and even if you're told no, it's okay. It's just a bid for love, and if you're not, or a bid for connection, or a bid for whatever, and if it's not met, it's not personal either, because that would be considered overflow. It's the behavior of the other person, whether or not the other person is trustable in that moment or fulfills your request in that moment, is not where your emotional well-being is coming from. It's, I'm stable over here. I like connection. I like being in harmony. I like making this request and deepening my intimacy with someone. And whether they say yes or no, the intimacy has been deepened regardless. So it's kind of like you have to develop some muscles around probably being rejected. Probably. Like, I'm going to keep myself stable. I'm going to take this risk. And even if I'm rejected, I'm still okay. I'm still loved. I'm still whole. I'm the one who feels guilty for having my socks on the floor when my husband couldn't care less. What codependency is this and how to fix it? That's condemnation. So the medicine for that wouldn't be, because you're not actually relying on his behavior or his response, because clearly he's not responding poorly. So that's completely irrelevant. You know, if I were to ask you, okay, if you did this bad thing, how would your husband respond? You'd be like, oh, he wouldn't care. He'd be fine. He'd love me anyway. I know you know that about your husband. So it's not codependency. It's, I'm condemning myself for doing this thing, for a story that I've made up about this is unacceptable, I'm burdening him, I'm whatever. There's some backstory to why you're condemning yourself for that, but that's actually what's going on. So then the medicine is giving yourself grace. When you're connected, it's like, it's no big deal. So it's giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. Taking a more gentle tone with yourself. I find that the grace virtue is tonal. More so than the others, it's a tone of it's all right. It's being forgiving with yourself. Guilt is not codependency. A lot of the time it's condemnation. You have helped me write the most epic breakup letter. God bless. I'm scared. You guys can't be telling me stuff like that. I don't want to be responsible for the end of relationships. Boundary queen. Yes, I am. Girl, you should see the boundaries I put up because of you. I'm telling you. Stick with me, kid. No one will fuck with you ever again. That's how we roll around here. This is going to sound pretty extreme, but I just want to illustrate the point. It's not absolute, but I want you to see it clearly. Almost any time you look at someone's present time behavior, you will get disconnected. Especially if it's someone who isn't behaving how you want them to behave. It's one of those sticky relationships. I'm not talking about someone who's easy to love. Like that isn't gonna flare up as much codependency unless it's like you're balls deep in codependency and that's just how you operate with everyone. But people who are easy to love you're not gonna experience this quite as much. But as a general rule, if you look at someone's behavior right now, it's gonna disconnect you because you've disconnected from their highest potential. Because that's what's over here. That's why Jesus is like, just give them your tunic too. Stay connected over here. Don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. That's what he was saying. They're going to tempt you to disconnect. Don't do it. When you look at someone else's present time behavior, most of the time you're going to want them to do something different. I want you to say this, do this, be this way, make this change, blah, 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 blah. That's what you're going to want every time you look at someone's behavior. And you can't look at someone's present time behavior and evoke something different. You have to connect to God in order to evoke something different. Their good behavior, your goods are over here. The way you want to be treated is over here. When you're connected to God, then you're calibrated to high quality behavior from others. And even if you're tempted by things that you could observe, because the option to observe these things and go back into your history, reflect on memories, turn on the news, there's a smorgasbord of all sorts of things that you could look at and that you could focus on that would make you feel codependent. That you would say, I want this to be different in order to evoke something that makes me feel better. So it's not that it will completely go away. It's that, one, the high quality relationships in your life will change for the better. They will improve for the better. And you will be guided to the people that are going to give you the highest quality interactions. That's how this path unfolds for you. It's not that the option to look at things you don't want goes away. It's that you are more disciplined with your focus, and that cleans up what you end up attracting in your life. Very important to hear. Brilliant way to see and explain it. If you look over here, you're going to want to fix it with words. So instead of other people having free will, every being has free will. But there's a difference between someone having free will and what you're evoking from them. So the only part that you're responsible for is what you're evoking from them. And you evoke the best by stabilizing yourself in the perspective of God. This is why the grace conversation was difficult for a lot of people, because it's, even though you're doing whatever, I have the capacity to flow love to you anyway. The reality is that God is flowing love to everyone. I am not even asking you to do that. That's too tall of an order for most people. Then it's like, well, now we're talking about enlightenment. If you can find peace in your heart and love in your heart for the people who have wronged you, well, I mean, if you can get there, I'll give you a round of applause. But it's like you don't even have to get that deep into it. If you can just, I don't know, find a way to give them a little more grace, a little more of the benefit of the doubt, being a little softer, being a little more gentle, that is something that will keep you more connected, because God is flowing full-blown love. Remember, the nature of God can't change, because if it changed, we wouldn't have a stable frame of reference, and then we wouldn't have a clear compass, because it would constantly be a moving target. So it has to be steady for us to feel into. So the perspective of God is love, 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 all is well, all is well, all is well, all is well, all is well. It's just a fire hose of love. That's why it feels good when you get in harmony with that, and you're flowing that, and you can flow that in any direction that you want. Grace is more of the gentleness, the kindness piece. Harmony is I'm connected to God, and the byproduct is it transforms my relationships. When I'm in harmony with God, the relationships become more harmonious. My partner refused to allow me to become codependent. It was a big part in developing a healthy relationship with him. That's good. How to evoke with partner through God. Just a little clarity on this again, please. It's literally just you being connected with God. The more you feel around for the perspective of God, the more you will start to adopt it. So, like, because I know you're in church, when we do grace journaling, I'm teaching you how to feel for the perspective of God and how to do that more and get more familiar with it and practice it more. It's just practice, because I believe that you can evoke pretty much anything from anyone. So it's like, I do believe that we can get certain things from certain people. I believe that because I've done it. So we're the ones who can calibrate to that. But usually people get too crazy with it. It's like, I need you to say this. It's coming from this really disconnected place. And so instead, the way to just clean it up, the way to just get a better version of everyone is to focus on your connection. To focus on, am I feeling connected? Am I, when something happens, am I quicker to forgive? When there's something that comes up in my life, can I continue to feel into overflow? It's like this applies to all of the shadows and all of the virtues. It's just stabilizing yourself in connection, which means you're going to feel all the virtues that we've talked about. You're going to feel that there's more than enough. You're going to feel quicker to forgive. You're going to feel more connected to love. You're going to do all of that. If it's all good with God, then how does that also say, forgive and leave the situation? Forgive and leave the situation. Are you, okay, this to me sounds like you're trying to like make a decision, and that might be the right decision, but usually people are like tormenting themselves over needing to make a decision about things like this, where it's like you could handle it in a lot of different ways. One of my favorites is, God, if he's not right, please remove him, or whoever you're dating. If this isn't the right one, just remove him, because the right one will stick. God, do for me what I can't do for myself. Or conversely, the other thing, if you are actually in harmony with God, for real, you are connected, you are in unconditional love. If this has nothing to do with tolerating shitty behavior, being a doormat, I'm not talking about that. You could be a million miles away in doing this. You flow love towards that person. If it's not the right person, they'll shift out of your reality. This is the interesting thing. I've tested this many, many times. When you're connected to God, the right people cannot stay in your orbit. They just can't. So to me, it sounds like you're getting confused because you're like, is that true? Is that what God's really saying? I don't know how I feel about that. It's too convoluted if you're trying to decipher those words because you're still not trusting that that's accurate. So that means something is off. So instead, if you can just flow love, flow love, flow love, any partner that is not right for you will not be able to hang out in that. They'll leave. Okay, I'm going further and further to God and he isn't coming along. That's none of your business. That's kind of the attitude that you want to take is I'm going to stay connected and let the pieces fall where they may. The good ones stick around. They sync up with you. So it's, I don't know if you're doing this, but one of the things that people might do in this situation is, okay, it feels really good over here, but now I'm looking here. He's not coming along and now I feel bad. You've disconnected. That fast. So you have to be careful with this because like I said, present time behavior will make you disconnect. Because now it's like, well, should I even keep doing what I'm doing? Should I stay connected to love? What if he leaves? Or what if this ends? You might have some discomfort come up with that. There's no right answer. All I can tell you is that the more you stay, the longer you stay in the wrong relationship, the more painful it gets. And the more aligned you are, the faster things get cleaned up. Can you be in a codependent relationship with God? Like you're expecting to receive something from God, and if it doesn't meet your expectations, it impacts your mood? Or is that an illusion of not truly being connected? That's codependent. Like I said in the beginning, if you look at your bank account, you've been believing God for something. You look at your bank account, it's not what you expect. Now you're disappointed. Now you're codependent with the bank account. Connection to God is unconditional. It is completely separate from conditions. Completely. So it is, even if the 3D circumstances are not looking how I want them to look, I am prioritizing this anyway. If you could fix things with action, let's say the path of least resistance was to take action on something. Well, do that. If the solution is laid right out in front of you and it's just take this step and correct it, do it. You don't need to wait for anything. But most people aren't dealing with that. Most people are needing to exercise faith in something that they cannot see, in circumstances that have not materialized. And this is why you may want to listen to the podcast episode that I just did called Sandcastles. Because I talk about this. I talk about if you're asking for small stuff, that's how you get into this situation. Just pay this bill, or just do this one little thing. Just do this, just do that. Just asking for these teeny tiny things. And so then you're waiting, you're anticipating this one teeny tiny thing. And if it doesn't unfold how you wanted it to, now you've lost your faith, you've disconnected from God, you're disappointed, and you didn't even get anything miraculous anyway because you were asking so damn small. It's a bad habit. If you asked for something fucking ridiculous and you were believing God for something insane, it seems like it's not going to happen for the next 10 years. It was that big, it excited you that much, you wouldn't be sweating this small stuff. I can tell you right now, if you were to give me the details about that, it would look petty. It would. It would look small. It would be just a teeny tiny ask. And people are keeping themselves on a roller coaster by not committing to asking big, asking for something that only God can do. I am asking so big, I am asking for something so outrageous that God will have to prove his existence in order for me to experience it. That's exciting. But most people aren't asking for that. And then that's how you get that experience. Now, I didn't get met, now I'm disappointed, blah, blah, blah. So the short context, the short-sighted vision keeps you on a roller coaster. Also, I just want to add, if you have felt like you're at a plateau, you're complacent, you're in this place where it's like, yeah, it's good, I know how to create. If you've been like that, then definitely listen to the last part of the Sandcastles, because I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to talk about the War Room and Apex, but then I ended up talking about like plateaus and complacency. Anyway, I go on a really good rant there at the end too about complacency. And if that is something that anyone listening to this is interested in, if you like my spiel about going big, you need to check out the War Room. Go listen to that podcast episode. Stay connected, stay in your own lane, and don't take the bait is the work. Yes. The trick to dealing with codependency is not taking the bait. For sure. Sometimes, like I said, I was a really bad manager codependent. Grew up with addicts. That's just how I adapted. And I would have friends in my life that were doing things that I didn't think they should do. And I used to let it affect me, right? It's like I would lose sleep over it because I wanted to manage their behavior so bad. These days, it's like, if someone asks me for my advice, I'll give it once. Unless you're paying me, then you can ask me as many times as you want. But if you're not paying me, you'll get my advice once. And beyond that, it's play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And if you make shitty decisions and you get shitty results, you will get no sympathy from me. I'm not wasting any time on that. I'm staying connected to God. And when I'm connected to God, that means I will evoke the best from you. But I am not getting in the trenches with people and sacrificing my connection for that. A rising tide raises all ships. This is how this works. If you're connected, the relationships have to rise to that level of connection. And when they don't, it's not like the people in my life don't ever ask for support or that I'm not a supportive friend, but I don't engage with like rumination. If they're talking about the same story over and over again, if they already know that I think it's a bad decision and they want to consult me on it again, no. We're not doing any of that stuff. So there's a limit to this. But if you do this consistently, if you persist in this, you're going to get better and better behavior from others, literally. People will start speaking to you differently because, as I said, it's not about being a doormat. But, like, do you think that, really think about God for a second. If you were to personify God, does he seem like a doormat to you? It is a source of power as well. The strength that God provides will prevent you from abandoning yourself. And the strength of God will prevent you from engaging in small-mindedness or spending too much energy on small problems. So this is a source of all the goods, including the emotions that you are wanting to feel more of, and anything that uniquely needs to be developed within you. When you are developing, because we all have a different starting place, we have to develop different things. When I gave the example of an abused woman, what she would need to develop is very different from what I need to develop. She would need to develop boundaries. I have to develop, or one of the things that I needed to develop more so was being softer, being more open and receptive to love, flowing more love. That was my work, was softening. So everyone has different things that are relative. This is why I'm constantly talking about relativity. It's not as concrete as people think because we're all in different starting positions. So what needs to be developed based on how you've adapted to life and your family of origin and all of that stuff, the paradigm that you're living in, the belief system that you have, all of that is going to determine your development and what needs to be developed. So when you are in harmony with God, that becomes clear. God will provide you with whatever it is that you uniquely require and the guidance that you uniquely require. This is why my work is not about I hold the answers. It's I facilitate you in helping you connect with God, and your unique guidance, your steps, what needs to be developed within you comes to you. I facilitate connection to God. That's the whole point. Because I do not hold all of the answers. The best thing that I can do for people in my work is create an environment, create an ecosystem where they connect with greater ease. So that's what I do. Because I help people with their discernment. I help people feel and hear more clearly. Like in the example before, when I was being asked about the relationship situation, and it's like, well, the answer is you go deeper into the connection with God and then see what emerges from there. God will not give you something worse than what has left your life. If there's a void in your life right now, God is not going to fill it with something shitty. If you believe that, then you need to rework your idea of God. You need to rework your expectations. But this is why so many people are worried about that. It's like, well, if I connect to God or if I say that prayer, I'm worried about that because I'm afraid of being disappointed. Now we're back to family of origin issues. So this is where, if you believe that God is good and if you believe that God is powerful and you believe all of these things, our experience, as long as we're not worshiping the mind, that can create a whole host of things, and that can come with other issues. So if we're not worshiping the mind and we're focused on God, we're worshiping God, we're connecting to source, we're focusing here, we're prioritizing this, and we believe solidly that this is a source of goodness and only goodness, better and better only. Hey, I have a tattoo right there. That's what this says. Better and better only comes from here. The deeper I go into this, the better and better it gets. Only better and better over time. If you believe that, if you really believe that even if something is taken from you, even if something is being rearranged, it's the whole thing. God will give you beauty for ashes. God will pay you double for your trouble. All of these are phrases that I like. Just these sayings about how God will renew, God will restore, God will replenish. Any redemption that you could possibly want is over here. So if you believe that, then you'll have no issue going all the way in. You'll have total faith, like, yes, I'm going to go all in on God because all the goods are over there. But most of the time what people are doing is, oh, it hasn't happened yet. Where is it? Where is it? Why? He's behaving that way and I don't like it. It's a distraction. It's like, get your ass connected. Remember, you are in the gym. These things that tempt you and distract you, the temptation, that's why they refer to Satan as the father of lies. He's tempting you. That's what that is. This is also coming back to the premise of the war room. That is the battle. Getting yourself back connected, that is the battle. At whatever stage you're in. on any subject. It is how long you allow yourself to be disconnected before you get your ass back in the saddle. And you do it over and over and over relentlessly. That's what this whole thing is about. All good here. Thank you so much for creating this companion series. I absolutely love 7 Deadly Shadows. Taught me so much. Good. These conversations have literally been life-changing. I can't thank you enough. My whole perspective has been shifted. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you for these calls. They have been so good and gave me the guidance I needed. Thank you for bringing them, and to God for making me get up at an ungodly time in the morning. Connection to God until you have the divine inspiration, then act. This needs practice, and it's life-changing. Yeah. And I mean, keep in mind, that's not always going to be practical, but it's a good habit to develop. This and 7 Deadly Shadows has been life-changing for me. So grateful to you for sharing all of this. Thank you so much. You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you. As always, I'm growing more with the advice you give. I feel more and more connected to God every day. I love that for you. All right, my friends, don't forget, church enrollment period closes on June 30th. The Big Bundle 12-month payment plan closes on June 30th. If you don't know what the Big Bundle is, it's a year of church, Once Upon a Time, and the War Room. It's all of those together. So those are the deadlines that we have coming up. The War Room, right now it's on pre-sale, and then the price will be going up soon. So if you want that, if you've been wanting to do an intensive, get in on that. Go listen to the podcast episode Sandcastles if you want more details. And the War Room starts, prep week begins the final week of August. And then the protocol itself, the intensive part, is September and October. So that's what we have going on. And I think that's probably, I don't want to speak too soon, but that might be the last mastermind that I run for 2024. So get it while it's hot. All right. Thank you. Your calls always bring me so much clarity. My pleasure. That's what I'm here for. All right, my friends, that is it. Let's wrap up with a golden sun, if you'd like to follow along. You're going to imagine a golden sun above your head. Call your life force energy back from anywhere you've left it. Reset at present time at permission to connect. And then crack it open like an egg, let it pour in through the crown, let it wash all the way down your body. All right, and that is a wrap. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This series has been so much fun. If you want to share this with anyone, please do. I would love for more people to hear this if you know someone who would benefit from it, or I'd love if you did that. And I will talk to you next time. I've been telling everyone about these. Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone, have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will catch you next time. Bye.